What is up, Misfits and Moonbasers? It's your boy Ray Recall coming at you again with another video review. And today we're going to be continuing Shockwave month with a look at a more recent entry into the lineup. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get right to it. So here we're going to be looking at the Transformers Studio Series Leader Class Dark of the Moon Shockwave. Yeah, there we go. Shockwave, yeah. Oh my goodness, my camera cannot pick up light to save its life. There we go. So this is Shockwave from the Studio Series Leader Class, and he is based off the movie design from Dark of the Moon, which of course was the only movie that he showed up in, sadly. And his vehicle mode is based off a thing that never showed up in the movies. But because he's a Transformer, he has to transform into something. So they went ahead and went with Murder Tank. I don't know if that's a nod to Transformers Prime Shockwave or not, but it's what they did. So there we go. Now, before we get into the meat and potatoes of the figure, there are a few things that I want to cover first and foremost. He does come in the box with a backdrop like all Studio Series figures. However, because this is a brand new figure, I still have the box backdrop. He's got a bunch of paratroopers. Yay, woohoo, I can throw this away now. Let's see what else. He also comes with a few mini accessories as well. So he gets a paratrooper dude. Can't really see the freaking... There you go. See, he's got one of those rectangular parachutes, and yeah, he's a paratrooper. Parachute doesn't work. I've tried dropping it from various heights, and it just goes like a brick. But apparently it's in scale with Studio Series, which is nice. And putting him off to the side right now. He also comes with two other accessories. Let me see if I can get these little lookers. He also comes with minifigures of Wheelie and Brains. And I know I'm going to regret this, but focus, focus. There we go. I seriously wish this thing would stay focused and have the brightness up as well. I need to just get a camera instead of a camera phone. Here we go. But, oh no, I lost Brains. There he is. Yeah, these are really nicely done minifigures. I mean, the detail, the mold detail on here is incredible. The paint apps are, geez. Yeah, these guys are really easy to drop. The paint apps are super, super spot on. Right there on the eyes and the hair. And, geez. And I know I might seem like I'm dropping these guys a lot. It's because these guys are tiny. For comparison, here's a Titan Master. Yeah. These guys, where did Brains go? Next to, these guys are tiny. Tiny, tiny, tiny. Although, I do have to say, they are pretty much in scale. I mean, if we bring back the paratrooper dude, I mean, Wheelie is within leg humping height, so take that for what you will. Anyway, it's nice that they put that in, but honestly, I would have preferred if they would have just left that off to the side and dropped $5 off the cost. Anyway, now that we got all the little knickknacks and paddywhacks out of the way, does anybody say that anymore? I do. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into the review proper for the figure, and what a figure it is. It has a lot of really nice paint apps with that brushed metal finish. It's very clean sculpting. You may notice, if you have some other Studio Series figures, that as I'm going throughout this review, some things might look a bit familiar to you. And that's because they should. If you notice, like right here, these pieces right here. This little front cow catcher thing that covers up Shockwave's VHS. Some of the tread detail, and we'll get a little bit more into that in robot mode, but this is a re-engineer of the Studio Series Tank Megatron, and uses some similar parts, very similar engineering, but this is way more massive, and I'll get into a little bit more of that again as we go into it. Now, as for Shockwave himself, he does have one actual accessory that's actually worth a darn, and that is this blade piece right here. It's hollow, as you can see, and is of a extremely soft plastic. I do know that there is a third-party company that has made a solid plastic replacement for this, as well as like a light-up gun barrel or something like that. There's actually a lot of soft molded plastic on this guy. Again, we'll get more into that in robot mode, but yeah. But this is the actually only accessory that he has that is any bit useful, and it just uses a little 5mm post, plugs in right on top in vehicle mode, and that's how that works. So anyway, there's that. So real quick, just to get some comparisons out of the way, here he is with little Cyberverse Shockwave. And here he is with the whatchamacallit, Siege Shockwave. Actually, Siege Shockwave is about just as long as Studio Series Shockwave. Studio Series has a little bit of extra length just because of the end of the cannon barrel. But yeah, there's that. And now to get into transformation, let's go ahead and lift up the camera. Just like so. And we'll get down to transformation, shall we? Why not? Okay, so the first thing you're going to do, take the weapon, put it off to the side. It can stay on, but honestly, I prefer to leave it off to the side. Oh yeah, almost forgot. The back thrusters are on hinges. These two are angled, and this one is just up and down. But you can angle those if you want, but the vehicle mode configuration should be like that. Anyway, getting down to the transformation, you're going to untab these sections. You'll see there's a tab here that goes into a slot right there, and rotate them down. Untab, rotate down, simple as that. Come to the top, unpeg the arms. They plug in, there's a slot and a tab, and then the same thing on the other side. There's a slot and a tab. So unpeg those, bring those up out of the way like so. Take the head, fold it down. Now, due to the fact that he's a retool of the Studio Series Megatron, he does have this panel and this hinge at right here. But whenever you're transforming him, you just need to lift up the rotate the head at the ball joint. You don't actually need to adjust any of that. That's a little bit of a leftover piece. Also, one thing I wanted to note is that the sculpting here ends up getting covered up in robot mode. They didn't need to sculpt all this extra detail into there, but they did, and I'm very glad that they did, because that's a nice touch. Anyway, coming to the back of the robot right here, you can see this entire panel will unpeg. There's slots and tabs right there, you can see, and just kind of bring that down. And now this is the tricky part. Whenever you separate the back part, there'll be a tiny little peg right here that'll go into a tiny little port back there, and that'll lock everything together. However, when going from robot mode to vehicle mode, make sure that the hose goes, let me just put this back real quick. make sure that this hose goes over this armature. And there is a hinge right here where the hose is connected to the backpack. Make sure that that's pressed in and that this hose goes between this armature and this back panel, because otherwise it won't be able to have the, it doesn't have the length to make that clearance. And it's a little bit tricky if you don't know what you're doing the first time that you transform him. I had to find out the hard way because the hose actually popped out of the little connector. But fortunately the hose is very soft plastic. I was able to just force it back in there and things went fine. But just keep that in mind whenever you're transforming him from robot to tank. Anyway, this whole armature is on a double hinge. Start to bring it back, and then while you're doing that, take the arms out from the back panel. These little sections will just kind of soft tab into this area. It just holds it in place until you tab everything together more securely later on. And again, they didn't have to put molded in detail, and it actually lines up with the stuff that's on the back. They didn't have to do that. I'm just glad that they did. And then bring it up on this double hinge so that move the arm out of the way. The back panel is up against the body. And then if you look here, there will be tiny tabs that'll go into slots in the shoulder assembly. And that's actually what will lock the back into place with the torso. Just like that. And those are some nice tight connections. They're not going to go anywhere. Coming to this outer back panel, and again, molded detail. Didn't have to do that. I appreciate it. Take this little hinge and start pushing it to the back. That'll help move things out of the way. There's a double hinge up in here. You just want to play with that until these tabs will go into these slots. Doesn't click into place or anything like that, but it sits there well enough. And then for the legs coming down here, you'll want to rotate, not in this hinge, but down here. That'll bring the foot up, and then take this panel and swing it back, like so. Do the same thing on the other side. Rotate that down and swing this panel back. Now this panel is on a hinge as well. That's another part that was carried over from the Megatron, but you don't really ever use that hinge. And then finally, you want to take these armatures and collapse them into the torso. Make sure that they pop into place. Same thing on the other side. Sometimes the click will be loud, sometimes it won't. It just depends. Orient the arms, and then come over here to his little panel and flip out the thumb. And there you have Studio Series Shockwave in his robot mode, and man, is he an imposing figure. I do like this version of this character, especially considering how the Dark of the Moon toy line, that Shockwave was pretty good, but this just has so much more presence. It has so much more detail. It's much more movie accurate, with a few exceptions, of course, like these little bits right here and the weird heel spurs. And once again, speaking of heel spurs and stuff like that, as you can see, these treads here, they have hinges, but you won't use them ever because those are parts that are carried over from the Megatron mold. Those were actually his feet that would open up. You don't do that with this figure. Those panels are held together by these leg pieces. They don't open or anything like that. Those are just parts that are carried over from the Megatron mold. Those thigh pieces are also carried over. The fact that he has a thumb might be carried over. I'm not sure. And speaking of the thumb, it is a soft plastic, as you can tell. So is the cannon barrel. These knee spikes or foot spikes are soft plastic. The hose assembly for the gun is all one piece of soft plastic. And then his hand is also one giant piece of soft molded plastic, which is interesting that they did that. I'm not sure why, but it doesn't really bother me. So, and then of course he does come with his one accessory. In tank mode, you used this port. In robot mode, you're supposed to use this port. Either way, it's just a little extra. And there you have that. So let's take a real quick look at the head sculpt. Love this head sculpt. Love this head sculpt. Really nice molding, really nice brushwork. And you get nice molding all over the figure as well. Some of these, these thrusters, you can do whatever you want with them. Really nice figure. Articulation, his head is on a ball joint. It can do a full 360. You can look up that far. Not really down very far. Now, he does have those extra parts from the Megatron, so you can technically have him looking down, but that breaks the sculpt. If you don't mind that, and it's all good. Left arm can do a full 360, can go in and out about that far. You do have a bicep rotation that is on a mushroom peg, about 90 degrees bend there at the elbow. And the wrist is on a bit of a hinge, but you don't really get a lot of range of movement with that. He does actually have, I don't know how well you can see it, right there is a cut for a 5mm port, or for a 5mm post. So if you have any other Transformers weapons, you can plug them in there, but it's unnecessary. But I'm glad that they did that if they wanted to. Now this arm, the right arm, technically can do a full 360, but then the cable's going to get twisted up in it. It can go in and out, and it does have a rotation. But again, cable's permanently attached. You do get more than 90 degrees of bend at the cannon. And of course, the thumb is on a hinge joint with a lot of range of motion. Oh, and the back cable, it's attached by a hinge joint here, and so it can move around a bit instead of being stationary. That helps a little bit. And of course, the back thrusters, you can splay out if you want. Now the legs have the same articulation. They can go forward that much, back that much, full outward extension. You do have a thigh rotation, a very deep knee bend, and then this little knee guard is on a hinge joint. And the feet have a lot of range of motion to them as well. So if you take a look here, there is a double hinge that the foot is mounted on, so you can get really high forward bend. If you move this little panel out of the way, you can go all the way into tank configuration if you want. And there is a decent, a really, really nice ankle pivot right there. So you do get a lot of range of motion with this figure. I was very pleasantly surprised about that. Yeah, so there you have that. And then for a quick comparison, here he is with the little Cyberverse Shockwave and the Siege Leader Shockwave without his armor. And then I guess as a comparison, here he is with brains and paratrooper, whatever. Yeah, those. I'm just gonna put those in a bag and forget I ever have them. Anyway, well, that pretty much does it for the Studio Series Shockwave. Really, really like this guy. Glad I got him. He is available at most retailers. Just make sure that you try to go in the beginning of the week when they do their inventory restock, because it took me a while to be able to get this guy. But if you can find him and pick him up, I would definitely recommend him. So anyway, that's about as much as I have to say about this figure. So this has been the Transformers Studio Series Leader Class Shockwave. I have been Ray Recall. You guys have been awesome. And thank you for sticking with Shockwave Month this far. There are a few more videos that I'm going to be doing. And as of the time of this recording, there should be uploading to the YouTube database and will be released on scheduled release time. So be sure to keep an eye out for those videos when they hit. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next review. Peace.